I think a lot of the AI conversation has been about well, that means we can have less humans. I think that's completely wrong. What AI does is it gives us the ability to produce more work on the same operating model. The same people can now produce 2 to 4 to 5 times as much work. In some cases, even 10 times as much work. AI is like an Iron Man moment. Like that you were a great marketer before, but now you have this suit on top of you and you can fly. And it gives you more capability to lean into things that you've always wanted to do, and it makes you more creative and more impactful. I've always felt that great content leaves the person better than you found them, even if all they ever do is consume the content. If they never buy your product or service, because they watched your video, read your content item, engaged in whatever interactive experience you had, you left them better than you found them. I think your content has to help someone solve a problem. It has to be about them, their desire to improve something in their organization, their professional life. No one cares what your product does. They care how you're going to help them solve a problem.
Welcome to the DesignRush podcast. I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Today we're excited to have Domenic Colasante, CEO of 2X, join us. Domenic's journey from roles at SAP and Siemens to spearheading 2X's growth shows his expertise in B2B marketing. We'll discuss the founding of 2X and how they're revolutionizing B2B marketing with their MaaS offering. We'll also delve into the current B2B marketing trends, the role of AI in video, and strategies for handling economic uncertainties. Remember to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives with industry leaders. Let's get into it. Alrighty, Domenic, thank you so much again for joining us on the DesignRush podcast. We're super excited to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Now, Domenic, before we get to the meat of our conversation on B2B marketing, I'd just like to allow our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So could you just start by introducing yourself and just sharing what led you to your current role as CEO at 2X?
Sure. So I'm a marketer by background. I'm a marketer now trapped in the CEO's body. I spent the bulk of my career doing marketing, mostly in the B2B space. Spent a lot of time in field marketing, a lot of time in marketing operations and events, mostly for tech companies like SAP and Siemens. And then I was a chief marketing officer for a bit of an IT services company. And really the reason I'm in this role at 2X is because I bought a lot of marketing services. I bought a lot of marketing tech. I bought a lot of marketing capabilities. And I found a gap in the market and saw an opportunity to kind of create the firm that I always wanted to buy from, but didn't exist. And so I can tell you more about 2X, but I built us to really be in more of the managed services space than in the traditional agency space. And that was a game changer for me as a CMO. And today we are a game changer for CMOs who are our clients.
Okay. Now, if I had to ask you to focus on a really pivotal moment in your career, what would that have been?
Yeah, I think back to with the idea to become, an entrepreneur and a CEO and to run a business, sort of a moment that I think it's when preparation meets opportunity, but it's also, I didn't have this dream from when I was a kid of forming my own business and being a CEO. I was sort of in a place where, I was running a marketing team and running a marketing function. And I had built something really special that was servicing me. And a friend of mine who was a CMO of another company said, you should make this a business. You should make this a company. I'll be a customer. And everyone has that moment when they sort of get the entrepreneurial bug and they decide I'm going to go, hang up my very predictable salary job into this more, higher octane life. And that was that moment. And I think it was born out of necessity of the business was something that I needed when I was a CMO and something that another CMO that I knew needed. And so it gave me that confidence to the world needs this. I'm going to go solve this problem and I'm going to create a business and then run a business that does this. And some of those moments come to you when you're not expecting them. So very pivotal moment.
Amazing. Okay, so let's actually get a little bit more into 2X and what you folks do over there. You talk about this gap that you saw and this problem that you wanted to solve. So for our unfamiliar audience, could you just briefly give us an overview of what that gap was?
Yeah. It's that I think a lot of marketers, a lot of marketing leaders, a lot of marketing managers, marketers in general are spending so much time and so much innovation on what I would say is half of their marketing function. They're innovating tremendously in the tech stack, and they're buying marketing tech like crazy, which is a good thing because it has huge potential to add value in how we generate demand and engage our customers and automate and bring in AI. And we're spending money on tech like crazy. We're also spending money on and obsessing about our advertising budgets, our program spend, making that more efficient and making it more targeted. Um, but marketers aren't really spending a lot of time and energy and innovation on their headcount, which is where half their marketing budget tends to be. Their marketing organization, the marketers that do the work. And most marketing departments look kind of the same as they've looked for the last 10 or 15 years. Still a large team of internal in-house marketers that tend to be generalists and wear lots of different hats and try to put out lots of fires and do lots of things and do strategy and execution and build campaigns and run campaigns all at the same time. And I think that in the last couple of years, really what I was seeing was we're buying all this tech and no one really knows how to use it in the fullest potential. And so we need skills and attention on the tech stack. That's a big area. We're also now in a world where I think a lot of marketers always wanted to keep their entire marketing department in-house, in person, in the same place because we're marketers and we're creative and we need whiteboards and we need to collaborate together. And we learned in the last couple of years that no, we're actually very productive and functional in a dispersed environment all around the world. And so why not lean into that more and be able to capture talent in new places and bring in capabilities? I also think there's been this constant focus on a lot of marketers are sort of doing everything. They wear 20 different hats. And when I was a CMO, I found that when you give a marketer on your team the job of doing strategy work and execution work, you have to do both. It sounds great in principle, right? Because now I can have this sort of Swiss Army knife marketer that can do whatever I need. But in practice, I found that the strategy got smaller because the marketer would only dream up ideas that they could execute. And let's not have a giant idea and speak it, because if you speak it, then you'll have to do it. And so the thinking tends to get a little smaller when you have to dream and execute. But then also the execution piece, you have a lot of work to do. You're busy. You're just getting stuff out the door, right? Are you really testing every email? Probably not. Are you really building nurture sequences? Are you really segmenting your audience to be really personalized? Not all the time. Are you following the 75-point plan when you're doing a webinar of all the things you have to do it best in class? Not really. And so when you have a generalist, they're getting all the work done, but the strategy is a little smaller and the execution's a little less best practice. When you split that into a different model where some folks do strategy and you specialize on the thinking and the planning and the innovating, and then other folks do execution and the running and the day-to-day caring and feeding and the production and just the execution work that marketing needs, it gets tremendously more impactful. Strategy gets bigger and unbounded and people can dream again and why they became marketers to begin with. And the execution gets way more efficient and way more impactful. And that's an example of just like innovating on the operating model, innovating on the human side, innovating on how work gets done. And I set up 2X to be a firm that can solve that problem and can provide a unique model for execution.
Okay, so in saying all of that, if you had to name one core mission that really drives the company, what would it be?
Yeah, we help marketing leaders get two things at the same time. We help them get more execution impact, more results, more revenue, more pipeline contribution, more ROI to the business, while we're driving significant cost savings and cost reduction. We do that through a network of delivery centers in Southeast Asia. But we are the do more with less marketing option. We're helping marketers get more revenue at the same time, less cost and less expense.
Okay. Now, Domenic, I'm also interested, which services are B2B marketers approaching you for right now, like the most? And why do you think those services specifically?
Yeah, our revenue is split a third across three major areas. I think they're kind of equally in demand. One of them is, as you expect, creative services. Any marketing service firm is. And I think in that area in particular, there's a lot of need on content and production of content, especially as we get more personalized and targeted. that creates a real bottleneck in content production. If you want to target 10 industries instead of one campaign that runs all industries, now you need 10 times as much content. And so whether that's writing or design or video or long form assets or short form, and AI is a wonderful, we'll probably talk more about that at some point. AI is a great hack to get that in a greater way, but content is something people come to us to. Another on the campaign side is account-based marketing, ABM, and really trying to get multi-touch, multi-channel programs put together to really surround a target account. And there's lots of research being done that only 5% of your market is in market at any given time. And so how do we market to that 5% in a very intentional way because they're in a buy cycle? And what are the campaigns, the emails, the ads, the tactics to activate them? We do a lot of that work. And then on the other third is the marketing ops, meaning the process, the tech in particular, managing all that tech that you've bought. Gartner does a report every year where they assess for all the marketing tech that's been purchased, what percentage of it's been used, is being used. And it's kind of depressing. It goes down every year, and now it's in the 20s. It's 20% of marketing tech out there is being used. And so how do we use it more? The vendor told me this awesome story of all the things the tech can do. And I saw this demo that was like life-changing. But in reality, I need someone to do that. There's a human side of using the tech, integrating the tech, working in the tech. And so I'm having individuals that can do that every day is also a big part. So it's really those three areas: creative, the ABM campaigns, and the marketing ops and tech that we get called in to support most often.
Well, okay, so we've talked a little bit now about, what 2X does and just, things in B2B marketing landscape, but I'd like to pick your brain now on some of the more emerging trends that we're seeing in B2B marketing, especially, in 2024 and going forward. So obviously this isn't news anymore, and we've kind of touched upon, AI and generative AI, and it's how, it's crept into all of our lives. I think we all know that, and I don't think it's slowing down anytime soon. So I'm curious to know if you're using generative AI right now, and if so, in what capacity?
We are using generative, and we started working with generative in April of 2022, about 6 or 7 months before the big wave that most of us remember kind of happened overnight. And we started working in two specific areas in April that year. One was with Jasper to support content production and collateral volume, which is a big constraint, as I mentioned earlier. And then the other area is in with one of our partners, 6sense, on their conversational email product, which is a sort of an AI sales rep to be able to reach out to prospects and figure out if they would like to learn more, would like a meeting, or kind of giving them something of value that feels very human. Both of those things have almost been in our almost 2 years now. We've been working on those. Today, we do a lot of AI work. We have an AI practice, we have an AI COE, we have an AI head. And a lot of our work in this space is, I think, like the next chapter of AI that isn't being talked about enough. This very real situation that AI saves work. And so you can get more work done. You can spend less hours doing the things that you would do every day in a marketing department because you now have AI. You can write faster. You can design more. You can create more ad creative for testing. You can produce more campaigns. So you could theoretically need less human hours to produce the same output. And I think a lot of the AI conversation has been about well, that means we can have less humans. We can do less. We can need less cost and less people. I think that's completely wrong. I think what AI does is it gives us the ability to produce more work on the same operating model. The same people can now produce 2 to 4 to 5 times as much work. In some cases, even 10 times as much work. That's what marketing needs. Marketing is not a cost center. It's a revenue center. And so our job as marketers is to generate more engagement and create more pipeline and add revenue. And in the last year, most businesses that have been struggling because they don't have enough revenue, not because their expenses are too high in the end. And so marketing is really about putting more revenue on the board. And AI is a wonderful tool to help us get more marketing in market. And I think about it that we know that when we can personalize programs, in at least in the B2B world, if we can target by industry, or we can target by persona, or we can target by geography, or we can target by segment, or target by some stage of the buyer journey for someone who's unengaged with us or is engaged and accelerating down the funnel, we know that the more personalized we get, the more lift in conversion we get. And we know that we can't personalize enough because we don't have enough content. And so AI is a way to get more content and drive more personalization, and therefore drive more conversion lift and more impact and more outcome. That's where the real value is. It's about putting more numbers on the board.
It's interesting that you say that, this idea that, just because we have AI that can do vast amounts of work in a lot less time, there's this idea that we might not need as many human beings on that, right? I'm curious though, how does that play into human creativity when it comes to using AI? I mean, do you feel like it diminishes your creativity or other people's creativity? And if so, how do you balance that then?
Yeah, I'll steal a quote from the CEO of Forrester, who says that AI is like an Iron Man moment, like that you were a great marketer before, but now you have this suit on top of you and you can fly. And it gives you more capability to lean into things that you've always wanted to do, and it makes you more creative and more impactful. It doesn't reduce that. And the way we have about 100 writers in the firm of 2X. So we have 100 people doing writing work, content work, and we certify them on AI, and they're using AI as part of their work where clients allow it and are okay with it. We have some that don't, which is interesting. But the writers love it. They were the first team to find their way to it because it eliminates writer's block. That helps. It helps them kind of like, I look at it that they're writing and then they have the AI over here, and the AI is like their assistant. Like, hey, I'm trying to say this. Can I say this differently? Or, hey, I'm looking for 3 things that fit in this area. Can you give me some more? They're prompting, and they're working with AI as an enabler of their creativity. And it's helping them write better, write faster, they can come up with the big idea, and then it can help flesh it out so they can spend more time on the big idea creative stuff. One other example I'll give you is in our graphic designers. We've done a lot of testing around, ad creative. And if you're in the B2B world, a lot of ad creative is stock imagery. It's kind of boring. Everyone uses it. Or it's sort of just like graphics that take a long time to produce. It takes a long time to illustrate some of these things. We're using some AI programs to create unique images and then use those in advertising and creative. And sometimes we'll see something built, or even if we're doing it for design, or even if we're using it to write ad creative and copy, the AI might recommend something that we wouldn't have done. And it's not grammatically wrong or incorrect or improper. It's just we wouldn't have said it that way, or we wouldn't have shown it that way, or we wouldn't have put that together. That's an idea that we might not have had. And we test it. And sometimes we find like, wow, that performed better than all the stuff we came up with. And so we learn something, and that makes us more creative in the end. And it makes it easier to test ideas that you didn't have. And I think it's human plus AI equals 3. It's not a 1 + 1 = 1.5.
Okay. So in saying all of that as well, which tasks would you say Gen AI really, really helps you complete the fastest?
There's something we do a lot. We call it content atomization. And so that's taking a core content item, like a webinar, and spinning it into a long form content paper, thought leadership paper, an article. And then spinning that article into a blog series. So it's 5 blogs. And then spinning each blog into an email that could promote it. And then pulling more volume of content out of a single large content item. Also, atomization when it comes to here's a content item that is appropriate for a horizontal audience. It's about HR and payroll. It applies to everyone. But if we modified it 5%, it could apply to HR and payroll in manufacturing, or HR and payroll in professional services, or HR and payroll in healthcare or life science. And so you might have a 5% change on the content item, and now you have an industry-specific version of it. That atomization type as well, where you're sort of able to produce a lot of content with just a little bit of variation on messaging, the title, the executive summary, some of the words throughout. AI is a great use for both of those. The format atomization of turning assets into different asset types so we have more volume of content. And then the messaging atomization to spin it to different use cases, personas, industries. And so really it's all about taking what's often a scarce amount of ideas that a client has. A client may have 10 or 15 like really big ideas that fuel their whole content strategy. Mm-hmm. And turning one of those ideas into 100 content items versus needing 100 ideas. And so AI is a great tool to be able to help us do that faster and in a more impactful way.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's basically just sweating the content with AI then. Um, do you have any like key steps or strategies that you use to repurpose content in such a way that it still feels unique when using AI? Maybe in editing or something like that after it's been generated.
Yeah, all of the content that goes out the door in our firm passes through a human in the end.
Hmm.
Whether it was AI produced or human produced, all of it gets edited. And that's, I think, a best practice, and I think a very critical step that you need to have. And so, yeah, the process is usually there's a content strategy developed, usually with a human, sometimes enabled with an AI for some prompting and some brainstorming support. But really, what content are we going to create is a very human um, activity. And then creating the actual content might be where AI can play a really big role. But then finalizing the content, approving it, getting it out the door, putting it in campaigns, that's where humans also come back in.
Okay. Now, Dominic, we kind of discussed this very, very briefly just before we got started today. But and I already asked you this if you're on TikTok, and you already said that you weren't. Um, but I did want to ask you more about, you're using TikTok in like recruiting and stuff. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Sure, yeah. I might be one of the least cool marketing CEOs out there. I still use a PC too. I get over to Mac. My team always makes fun of me for not using a Mac, but I'm clinging to my Lenovo ThinkPad. And TikTok is another one of those things. I need to get on it. I need to fully embrace it. But we have not had a lot of demand for TikTok in our customers. I don't think a lot of our companies are large enterprise companies, big brands. And when they are demanding it, we will run to that space in a big way and build the capability around it. We have had, to your point, we have had a lot of interesting use cases in recruiting. And so our firm's about 1,000 people. It's only about 6 years old, so it's grown fast. We hire a lot. We hire right now about 60 people a month. And so we're rapidly expanding our team. This is sort of grassroots. It's happened in the business without me kind of telling anyone to do it, which I love. Is some of our practice leaders and our recruiting team members have started to build TikTok pages to show our culture and our life at 2X. They've started to use it for recruiting. We do a lot of cool things. There's ping pong tournaments. There's, you know, parties of all kind, and the hype videos on TikTok are way cooler than a lot of the hype videos I see on our normal website. And that just like human energy and that like community building and collaboration, we found it really kind of as a place for us to show prospective employees who we are and show them what our culture is and what life is like, and show them that it's a lot of fun. And it's not just all fun. There's real learning and there's real innovation and professional career development, but the kind of person we hire, our employee who's working on our clients, is on TikTok. And so in that world, it's been wonderful for us as a recruiting tactic, particularly in creative resources, writers, designers. Really interesting way to kind of engage them. And I think that also for them matters because they're not just responding to some job board or job ad or getting something on LinkedIn, which feels very corporate. They want to be, a part of a high energy, fun marketing company, and TikTok's a great way to kind of show that face of your brand.
100%. Yeah. I mean, every spare moment I have, I'm on TikTok. If I have to be honest, I can doom scroll for days. But I think these days, if you're not in some capacity marketing on TikTok, I feel like you're making a mistake. There's a huge, huge demand for people on there. And I know that especially, more than half of Gen Zs are using it as a search engine now. So, I mean, it's quite interesting to see that, evolving from this app that was meant to just be like for kids, making little dance videos and stuff. But I do wonder, what would be your like future insights into how TikTok or platforms like TikTok can bolster the B2B marketing industry, especially in campaigns, actually?
Yeah, I think the area where it will become really powerful is in some of the specialized targeting that's going on. And so there's some amazing platforms that allow you to really get into targeting an account or a person in an account. I want to target Dom at 2X because he's the CEO of a marketing service firm. And marketing service firms are my ICP and CEOs and I want to get the Dom wherever Dom is. I want to, if he's on LinkedIn, if he's on Facebook, if he's on ESPN, if he's on Forbes, if he's on TikTok, wherever he is, I want the ads to go. And so I think that personalization element is where it will add the most value, because as prospects, customers are on those platforms, they should start to get, the ads more, it's targeted at the person, not the platform. And I think that's a difference. It's not about the company just having a megaphone to tell the world who it is. Surprise, like, world doesn't care, right? We're in a very busy, noisy world. No one really cares who you are until they need what you do, and then they care. And there's a very small percentage of people that need what you do right now. And so there's some great tools like Sixth Sense and others that allow really specific targeting to accounts and people in those accounts. And that B2B, advertising method, as it gets smarter with AI and gets more able to predict behavior of, what organizations and people are on a buy cycle because they're exhibiting this kind of content consumption behavior on the web. And then how do we automatically turn on marketing for them at a time that feels very authentic? And we've all had these moments in our life when you're like, how does it know that I needed this? Like, is my phone listening to me? And I think a lot of it is really, really good AI that's predicting your behavior because it's looking at what you're searching, what you've been consuming, what you bought before. We've seen that in our B2C lives. I think B2B is building that as well. And ultimately, these platforms, all social media, I think should be targeted in that way versus, we have a TikTok channel and we run TikTok because we want to be on TikTok.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's move a little bit away from TikTok, but I'd like to talk more about, video marketing campaigns. So what advice would you give to B2B marketers on creating really impactful video marketing campaigns these days that could be used across various platforms?
Yeah, video is the most important and growing form of content. I just read a study from IDC where they asked marketers, of all the content you're building, what are you going to build more of next year? And video is like by far the highest. And I think that's just another example of that, marketers moving in that direction. I think you should think of video as the same as content. It's, historically we would in the B2B world, write a white paper or a thought leadership paper or a solution brief or some long form asset. That's not the preferred content consumption vehicle anymore. It's video. I want to sit here and have you tell me the story. There's a little bit of the prospects in control of their journey. They want this frictionless way to be educated, and they want you to teach them something they don't know and help them solve a problem. And video is a wonderful way to do that. And we think about it that all marketing campaigns, all content should have a video component to it. And it doesn't need to be the old school video that's like you have the storyboard, it's really hard, it takes you 2 months to produce a 2-minute video. It doesn't have to be at that level. It can be, using animated explainer. It can be doing some cool things with B-roll. There's a lot of stock videography stuff that's normal now to see. It's not abnormal to see somewhat of an informal interview become a major asset. That like studio production layer we're used to it. We're on Zoom all day. We understand that people are in their homes or people are in places that are, they're talking to their computer. That type of content channel, I think, needs to be thought of when you're building. And so we're going to create a program. There are some people that like to read long form content, but it's about, back to my atomization point, it's about having your idea, whatever message you want to convey, told in as many formats as possible. Some people want a podcast, some people want a video, some people want an infographic, some people want a short form blog they can just get with some bullet points. I have a guy like that in my firm that only reads emails and bullet points. Some people really want long form. I want to chew on this. I want to really get into it. I want like a 10-page thing because I'm a reader. Some people like a video. And I think the more format of assets you can put that actually has the same message and on the core of all those assets, you don't need different things to say. Say the same thing in all those different formats. That has, I think, a really great likelihood of impacting your audience. And of all those formats, video is the one most preferred by folks consuming information in their buyer journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think there's this big part about video that really drives authenticity as well, or trust, I think, so you just saying like, you don't have to spend 2 months creating this incredible well-produced video. It can be just like an explainer, or even something like an informal podcast, sitting down and talking together, about certain things. And I almost feel like people find that really valuable because it's authentic. It's not this like fake scripted sort of vibe where you're feeling like something's being sold to you. It makes you kind of maybe feel like you're part of the conversation. So my point is, I wonder where you think the authenticity or the craving of authenticity is coming into B2B marketing now as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I agree with you 100% that especially as AI gets even more used, there is this craving of authenticity and people feel it. And something draws them to content that feels like it's a human or a thought leader or a person. And I think maybe it's based on, I've always felt that great content leaves the person better than you found them, even if all they ever do is consume the content. If they never buy your product or service because they watched your video, read your content item, engaged in whatever interactive experience you had, you left them better than you found them. You gave them an idea they didn't have. And I think that format translates really well over video. Someone can, give a provocative idea or quickly explain something. Some of that nuance is hard to pick up in other formats. And I think there's also a little bit of a skepticism of, is this written by human or AI? And in the same way, I could, that's another thing, I could see humans starting to prefer, to not prefer things that are obviously AI content, because it'll create I think a belief that it's not authentic. And right or wrong, I think the more humanity you can bring into your marketing and the more you can show, particularly in the B2B world, companies don't buy, people in the companies do. The more you can talk to those humans and those personas and those people and help them solve a problem, the more likely you are to create trust with them. And with that, now they're interested in learning who you are.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think it's so interesting that you just said that. I think that it kind of reminds me of like I don't know about you, but if you're on LinkedIn and you can spot like AI generated posts like from a mile away now, and it just seems like everybody's craving that authenticity from businesses and just thought leaders alike. So in your opinion, just moving on to LinkedIn now, actually, but like in your opinion, how do you personalize marketing experiences on LinkedIn when it comes to B2B while using AI? Is there something that people can do or different like steps that they can take to make their content more authentic, but still push out a massive amount of content on there?
Yeah, it's the same point I made before. I'll hit it with a little more detail. I think your content has to help someone solve a problem. It has to be about them. And their desire to improve something in their organization, their professional life, their roles, their teams, their company. No one cares what your product does. They care how you're going to help them solve a problem. And so it's moving from the messaging that's about you and your business and how awesome you are and how you've done something no one's ever done before, into how can you help them achieve something that is really important to them? How can you help them be a more impactful professional, drive more impact in their business and their roles, evolve in their career, solve a problem that's really painful to them? And I think you have to orient your content towards that objective. And in that world, AI, I think, can help you do that. It can help you, you have to direct it of what you want it to write or create, and what tone you want it to use, but it should be helpful and informative, and really almost based on, helping them understand the category you're in, the how to solve the problem they're facing, different alternatives that might be a path to solve the problem. And of course, you do the best alternative, right? It feeds in very, very well into what your message and your product and your story is, but it starts with helping them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much again for going more into detail with that one. But just like on the topic of LinkedIn, we do also know that that's becoming quite a major, platform for B2B marketing as well. So are you utilizing the platform for that as well?
We are. It's one of our most significant. And same point, though, I think we're using it by running programs that are targeting persons or accounts that happen to show up on LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIn is a place where that content should show up. And I think it's a unique vehicle for people in the B2B world because most business buyers are on it. Most LinkedIn InMail gets read, at least even if it's scanned, but it gets read. Most email does not get read. And I think having that place where people go to learn, people go to see an idea, people go to network and collaborate with other professionals is a very great community that sort of encourages that kind of professional dialogue. And it's a great place to insert, your thought leadership, your help, your advice, your ideas. It's also great. It allows you to do some cool things with targeting. You can get really specific on targeting accounts and targeting people and targeting the VP of supply chain at these 100 companies and being able to do some of that segmentation based on someone's professional profile is, I think, a bit of a unique capability that doesn't exist in other platforms. But again, I think it's just a place where an ad shows up. It's a place where content can be given. And I think it could also be a place where, your brand as a home. If you're selling to B2B organizations, it's a place where your brand should have a voice. It should say interesting things that are helpful. People will follow you and want to consume your information. It's a wonderful place for recruiting. The kind of talent you can get out of that platform is in my view, far and above places where you would get, career sites, job boards, other places where you'd find talent. It's a really good use for that. And I think it should be in the core of the B2B toolkit. But I think it's one of any tools inside that toolkit.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you meant by that? That the targeting on LinkedIn, especially in the case of B2B marketing, is unique, that you don't really get anywhere else?
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do on there. So I want to target these companies, and I want to target people in these companies, or I want to target these companies and this persona, the supply chain line of business, the HR line of business, or I want to target these companies, this persona, and this seniority level, director and above, or VP and above. I want to target companies above these employee size parameters and these geographies. I think some of the targeting think of it as a platform fully built for B2B versus something that's more B2C that might target different types of demographics that are more important to a person and their age and their family and their, hobbies and passions. And I think in the LinkedIn world, more of the, what's my ideal customer profile and how do I make sure that I'm marketing inside of that ideal customer profile? And particularly going into marketing to named accounts, or if we know through some tools I talked about, like 6 Sense, we know what the 5% of our market that's in market right now. I want to market to those 200 companies, and I want to be really precise of targeting those 200 companies. And there's this old adage, half my marketing budget is wasted, but I don't know which half. That's not true anymore. 100% of your marketing budget can be spent on the right audience, the right segment, the right sort of in-market group. And I think that's not wasted when you're either building awareness or generating demand or creating activation and engagement in those segments where there's a real need for what you do.
Okay. So in the context of B2B marketing on LinkedIn, what sort of strategies would you recommend for marketers to utilize the platform effectively?
Yeah, I think you got to think equally about content and targeting. Think really hard about how your content helps someone solve a problem, and think really hard about where do you want this content to go? Who should engage with it? And so many times I run into marketing departments that kind of, I think of it like a bullseye. You have the center bullseye who's like your perfect customer fit. And it's the right title, it's the right account, it's the right person, it's the right company size, it's the right industry. And then you have the concentric circles where they're less good of a fit, but they're still relevant. You might still sell something to them. It might be an influencer in your buyer journey. There's some research now that most B2B purchases have about 10 people involved in the purchasing committee. And so you need to market to lots of people to activate, them into an awareness of what you do and into some level of trust that you do it well. I think my advice would be to be really honest with yourself of where to set the boundaries of targeting. There's a lot of companies that talk to you, well, this person could be a fit 5% of the time, so let's put them on the list, right? And then you end up having a list of a whole bunch of people that are maybe a fit some very small fraction of the time. And then the people that are a perfect fit get the same level of ad budget, the same level of attention. And I think you have to be more weighted in your targeting, right? Put more money and attention on the group that's more important, rather than have this giant list of like, well, it could be these 10,000 companies. It could be these, 32 different personas. We're going to run a big campaign to everyone. You don't have enough money to run a big campaign to everyone. So you have to be really focused, and you have to really think about targeting, and you have to think about your ICP, your ideal customer profile. You have to think about what part of that ideal customer profile is in market based on some of the intent tools I talked about. And you really need to kind of point rifle shots in those areas versus try to have this programmatic big machine that advertises or markets to everybody.
Okay. What are the questions that you ask yourself about who your ideal customer is to target to them?
Yeah. We look at who our customers are, right? Who buys from us, and of all the, most companies sell lots of different things, lots of different people, but the ones that are like the most successful customers that get the biggest impact, that stand on stage and win awards, who are they? And how do we go find more of those? And how do we think about, areas where our product's going to be really, really, really successful? How do we also think about where there's the most problems and pain? The pain I talked about of having to deliver more impact and more revenue and reduce cost and increase results at the same time. Where is that pain occurring? And the pain might be occurring in companies that are going through turnarounds or transformations, or recently, went through a change of control at the private equity layer, or went from public company to a private company, or someone who had a leadership change, a CMO change, or a CEO change, or a CFO change, even more important sometimes. Did they go through a merger? Like, how do we identify attributes that make someone need us more than average, where they have a pain that's more intense because of conditions in their business, and how do we target them? And how do we also know that they're on some content consumption journey? Like, there are 10 problems that we solve. Are they consuming content about those 10 problems? Are they trying to get advice and perspective? All of those things really drive how we decide who we're going to target versus not target.
So, okay, we've talked a lot about, B2B marketing trends and stuff, but there is something a little bit more serious I'd like to discuss with you. And that's, the economic volatility that we've seen in the last year or so. And I know that many companies aren't as quick to, pull out their wallets for marketing these days. And I'd like to explore this with you because, as I think, a CEO, I'm pretty sure that your insights here will be quite interesting. So, firstly, how have you seen the economic downturn impact B2B marketing, particularly when companies aren't spending as much on marketing these days due to budget constraints?
We've seen it in layoffs. It's been a big or organizational restructuring or transformations. We've seen a lot of thinking around that. Do I really need all these marketers? I'd love to have them. Can I afford all of these marketers? And I think a lot of it's been, most marketing orgs have this big, fixed cost of labor. We might be able to dial the advertising budget up and down. Most do that regularly. But how do we really focus on getting more efficiency out of our headcount area? And a lot of companies have decided to have less headcount. And unfortunately, I think that's a short-term action, because most of these companies have gone through layoffs, have laid off lots of marketing people as one of the major areas where they've seen headcount reduction. But they haven't laid off the work. The work is still there. And so they've just spread that work around less people, which is now going to create a second wave of employee burnout and employee dissatisfaction and employee fatigue. And now that's even a bigger problem that we'll have to deal with. And we saw a little bit of that last year for sure. And we're going to see more of that, I think. And I think it's the desire to sort of change where a giant line item of our budget goes to. I think, there's better ways. I think it's not about reducing the headcount or shifting the work across more people or increasing span of control. So rather than being a manager with 8 direct reports, now you're a manager with 12 direct reports. It's about changing the operating model. It's about coming up with something better that's flexible, that can scale with you, that can lean into areas where you get more efficiency, and something like what we do with with the managed service model, with an offshore component, with really a vendor who now you can dial up or down without having to go through rapid hiring and rapid layoffs, and going to get you off this exit ramp you from that volatility, which is going to continue to occur. I think that's one, and so I think there's been a real focus on getting something different out of the headcount component in marketing. I also think there's been a real focus on the tech that marketers have bought. Work with a lot of tech companies. Churn or non-renewal in the tech space is a big problem for a lot of tech businesses because they've sold this SaaS model where you subscribe and you have it forever. And a lot of companies have decided that they don't want to have the tech forever. And part of that's because not the tech's fault. The tech's amazing. It does exactly what the vendor said it does, but the company's not using it because they don't have capacity back to the human problem. It's sort of, these things are related. And so how do you get more stable impact without more expense, I think, is using the tech that you've already bought, and not necessarily needing to buy more, but keeping it and getting more value out of it. And in those areas, I think it's how you limit some of the volatility of going from this like spending to saving and spending and cutting. And how do we just smooth out getting recurring impact from the investments we've made, and being really clear and aware of where there's ROI and where there's benefit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just getting a little bit back to, financially wise, how I think the economic downturn has affected budgets, I think, across various industries. What would be your strategies for adjusting, budget allocation in B2B marketing to ensure that there is effective use of resources in a volatile market? I mean, are there any specific elements that you would say marketers should focus on in a B2B campaign to still have it make a really big impact?
Yeah, I think of your headcount, at least a third of that headcount should be in some type of variable vendor managed service outsourced model. That will give you flexibility, that will give you the ability to move things around, that will give you cost reduction, that will create more execution impact, as we talked about earlier. And I think shifting in that operating model in that direction is a huge unlock in getting more results, and also allowing you to deal with a bit of a budget reduction in the current environment. I also think it's important that that marketers get really focused on outcomes of their work. And so ideally, we want to see revenue and ROI, right? That's the goal. Short of that, we want to see pipeline creation. We know that goal. But short of that, I think we really want to get focused on measuring activation and engagement. And by that, I mean that there's some target audience we want to go after that we know is really important, that we want to get to. And we're able to market to them and then see through our marketing and our data and our results that that audience is engaging. They're coming to our website, they're reading our content, they're watching our videos, they're following us on social. They've moved from a stage of totally unaware that we exist into some level of engagement with us. And then from there, we'll get from engagement to higher engagement and ultimately pipeline and revenue. But measuring engagement and activation as a really successful marketing moment. I think a lot of marketers have gotten KPI'd on, well, how much pipeline did you produce? They've always gotten these like sales KPIs. I think that's critical, that it should be in their KPI mix, but it shouldn't be the only KPI. We got to be marketers again, right? How do we get prospects that don't know who we are into a level of engagement with us, and we can be marketers again, and we can really start to show that this account, this company, this group of personas, these people are now engaged with us, and we can demonstrate that and be really precise. That's a sales result, right? That's real, activation it's a leading indicator, at least, for where we will build pipeline, where we will create revenue. And so I think, focusing on that engagement and activation metric, in addition to the pipeline and the revenue and the ROI and those things, I think is a real way to show that this is working. And we're not just marketing and we're getting some impressions and we don't know who they are. We're really getting dense activation in this segment that's important to us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so also then on that topic, I presume that you look at data probably daily, right? So which metrics are you looking at the closest during a B2B marketing campaign?
Yeah, it depends on the stage. So as you're early in the stage of launching, you're really trying to look at account activation and engagement. of the people that we're targeting, how many of them are engaging meaning all the things I said, right? They're on the website, they're watching content, they're spending time with us. I believe strongly in an ungated experience. And so don't put forms in front of everything and create all these speed bumps and roadblocks, and because your prospects just go somewhere else. They don't want it bad enough. And so creating sort of visibility of the target audience we're after, what percent of them are engaged and how engaged are they, and how do we increase the intensity of that engagement? That's a metric you look at early on. I think as you go, through the journey of a campaign, you're going to look at how many of those folks that we're sharing with sales or handing over to sales are opening conversations with us and becoming engaged in a human conversation with a rep and finding their way into pipeline. Ultimately, towards the end of the campaign, or maybe even after the campaign's over, you look at how much of that became revenue and how much of it produced a real tangible ROI. And then I think there's also another step after that is how much of that revenue stayed, how much of it retained with us, how much of it bought more, how much of it told their friends. And that kind of revenue that retains and becomes advocates is almost more valuable than revenue. And so it is more valuable than revenue. And so it's not just stopping the thing at like, well, we sold it. Success, right? Closed one deal, marketing ROI, on we go. Like I would extend it further out and like, did it renew? And are, the things that renew the best or things that become advocates are worth way more to us than things that buy once and go away. And so factoring that into your customer acquisition cost or that into your, cost per lead or whatever metric you're using there, I think has real value too.
Okay. Now, Domenic, before we start to conclude our conversation today, I just want to circle back to something that we did or you touched on early on in the episode. Could you share how you perceive the role of B2B marketplaces like DesignRush, for instance, connecting companies with the right marketing agencies?
I think places that can help someone navigate a very noisy, crowded market are valuable. It's hard to find authenticity and trust in corporate websites alone, and so I think having communities that are full of people that have had experience and have reviews and understand what's a quality resource versus just an available resource, I think are valuable. I think there's always a place for freelancers in the market. I think there are needs that come up that are sporadic. You buy a company, you need to rebrand all their stuff, and you need someone to help you do that. You may not need them every day after that. Mm-hmm. And so I think some of those places are good ways to give a connected pathway between someone who needs something done and someone who can do it. And the more of those we have, I think the more flexibility folks on both sides of the equation have.
So I only have like one more question for you because I also know that you need to head out. And that is, if you have to reflect back on, your career, I know that a lot of us have mentors and people that we look up to. And I'm wondering, who do you respect the most in the B2B marketing industry? And what have you learned from them that made them such a standout person in your view?
There's a couple heroes in the space. I'll just say the first one that came to mind. The chief revenue officer at 6 Sense, Latini Kanat. She is someone who's made marketers successful, who has spent a huge part of her time as the chief market officer at 6 Sense, running 6 Sense's marketing, but has published advice and perspective and books that have made marketers more impactful, has helped marketers in their jobs, has helped them in their careers, has helped them, be more impactful with using marketing to generate revenue for their company. Most recently, she was promoted to chief revenue officer as well, which I love. And I'll rant for a bit that there's the chief revenue officer role was created to be the unifier of sales and marketing. And yet almost every CRO I've ever met is a head of sales. It's now the CRO. And so very seldom do you see someone that really understands marketing because they did it for a really long time in the CRO job. I was so happy to see her get promoted into that role. And I think 6 Sense is going to be a lot better for it. Having someone with that really balanced sales and marketing brain over all of those pieces, And I think like she just lives the I'm going to leave the industry and marketers better than I found them, and that's what great marketing thought leaders should do.
Thank you so much today for everything, Domenic, and for taking the time to sit down with us. This has been a fantastic conversation with you.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for having me.
And that concludes our conversation with Domenic Colasante. For those in search of a top-tier agency's expertise, look no further than DesignRush.com/marketplace. Discover a comprehensive selection of agencies primed to transform your vision into a reality, be it in digital marketing, web design, or beyond. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more invaluable conversations with luminaries and pioneers in the industry. I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Stay curious and join us for the next episode.